how to ask better questions. Travis, obviously you've learned this over 800 plus episodes. What would you tell the listener?
Yeah, the first thing is that it's just a matter of reps. The best way to get good at anything is to go do it. I think we have a tendency, probably just because of the total sheer volume of content that exists in the world today, we have a tendency to overlearn before we execute. So you're going to sit there and try to learn about raising capital for your startup for 18 months until you actually go ask somebody for money. You're going to sit there and learn about how to podcast. You're going to sit there and learn about how to build a business. And you're just on a constant hamster wheel of, learning and using that as an excuse for not getting into it. Cause you tell yourself, I just want to be really good. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the right way. It's like, cool. I get that. And there is some of that to that. And there should probably be more prep going into things, but action always supersedes any of that. So the number one thing is just go start interviewing people and you'll start seeing how difficult it is. Now, I understand I'm talking to a little bit, maybe more sophisticated audience. Maybe they already have a podcast launched. They're in year one and they want to know how to ask better questions. So the next thing I would say is the only way to make up for lack of experience is over preparation. So when I first started, I would prep a minimum of a half hour for every interview. For like the bigger names, like anytime I landed a big name who had been interviewed a lot, it was always 3 to 5 hours of prep time. For those bigger interviews, sometimes more. Like if they had a book, I would try to read all of their book, at least some of their book, a couple of chapters, go listen to them on 3 to 5 other podcasts and hear what they talk about a lot. You have to keep in mind that you want to create good content for your audience, but you also want to make sure that you're creating good content for that guest. Those two things are typically intertwined because if you get your guest talking about something that they're passionate about, they're more likely to give you some golden nuggets around that thing.
Can you give one example, like one example of a bad question and a better question?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 question formats. So I always tell people, remember your buddy Ted, TED. Tell me about, explain to me how, describe for me. Instead of what inspired you to become an entrepreneur. It's tell us the story of how you got started with your company. Tell me about why that event had such an impact on you. Saying, tell me about prompts a story. It doesn't prompt a question. And stories are the best way to disseminate information and make an impact on the listener because stories relate to people. And ultimately, the reason that people aren't getting results most of the time is they're telling themselves the wrong story. The success doesn't start with the result. It starts with the belief that it can happen. You know what I mean? Like it starts with mindset. Do I even believe this is possible? Then it goes to desire. Do I want this for myself? And then it goes to action. Can I do something about it? And then it goes to cycling that over and over again before you reach the moment of success. But if you never start with the thing that like, hey, I believe this is possible for me, or I believe that I can do this, or I believe something, you have to believe something positive about what you're wanting to go get, or you're never going to start. It will be prohibitive in your ability to take action. And the best way to get people to believe those things and to change somebody's belief system around how they think about themselves or around what they think is possible is stories. And so you as a host, if you're trying to, especially if you have like an education show, you're a coach or you have a business show, you're probably doing some sort of education. That's the value you provide. It's probably not an entertainment show. Okay. So if you're trying to provide that value, then you got to provide that value. And the best way to do that is through stories. I can sit here and tell you how to go start a podcast and grow your audience and how to push through the first couple months and how to monetize. And here's 4 ways. And I can do it blog style article. But the bottom line is it's going to be way more impactful if I tell you my story of exactly what I did, the obstacles that I hit and how I overcame them. That will relate to the audience more and will give them more inspiration and will instill more of a belief system in them that it's possible for them. They're not just hearing the 1, 2, 3 steps. They're hearing a story, and then you can pull the practical side out of it. So I try to get as many stories as I can to tell me about, explain to me how, describe for me is super helpful. I'll say stuff like set the scene for us instead of saying like, so a lot of people start with these generic questions like, tell us about yourself, 30 seconds. So instead, what I try to do is say like, set the scene, what it was like growing up for you at age 9. It's the same question. It's just way more specific. And I do the same thing. And I'm sure you do too. I get interviewed all the time by people. So yeah, just habitually, I've figured out over 400 times of being interviewed by people that if somebody asks me that question, it sounds almost identical every single time.
Yeah.
But when I go to somebody and say like, hey, bring it back to when you were 9, set the scene for us and tell us what it was like being you at 9 years old. That all of a sudden they literally start going like, oh man, 9-year-old me. Yeah. I have this memory when I was in such and such city in such and such state. And my mom, who was a chiropractor, she said to me that I was never going to be able to do this thing. And like, that was actually one of the first times that I remember, you know what I mean? Like you just immediately start getting into better stuff that's unscripted. It's off the beaten path. And, like my biggest compliment that I receive as an interviewer, the thing that I'm trying to get in every interview is when people go, oh, no one's ever asked me that before. Or, wow, I've never talked about this on a podcast before, but here we go. Like those are always the best thing for me because I don't want them to be scripted when they come on my show. You know what I mean? Like I want to have a real conversation, and to do that, you gotta bump people off of autopilot sometimes. And I found that the like phrasing questions like that will more effectively do that than other, potential methods.